Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Hart Nelson, and I have the honor of chairing Citizens for Modern Transit. And on behalf of CMT, I'd like to welcome you to our quarterly Talking Transit event. Today, we'll be discussing transit as a focal point for placemaking. I want to thank all of the CMT board members who have joined us this morning. And I'd also like to thank CMT's Platinum and Gold sponsors, including AARP in St. Louis, Bi-State Development, the City of Belleville, Realtor Association of Southwestern Illinois, St. Clair County Transit District, Washington University in St. Louis, BJC Healthcare, Gonzalez Companies, Greater St. Louis Incorporated, HNTB, Missouri and Kansas Laborers District, and Ullico. We'd not be able to provide these updates without their phenomenal support, so thank you. I want to also thank all of you for joining us this morning. We're really excited to have you on the call today to discuss the value of placemaking and how transit stops are a natural fit for placemaking projects that can have transformative impacts on the local communities. CMT, in partnership with AARP in St. Louis, St. Clair County Transit District, and Metro Transit, have been dipping our toes into the placemaking world for the last few years, and the results have been impactful for the riders and communities alike. And now I'm going to turn it over to our fabulous Executive Director, Kim Sella, to introduce our panel and to get this conversation started. So thanks again for joining us. Kim?
Thank you, Hart, and welcome everyone to this important conversation looking at another aspect of public transit, its ability to impact not only people, but place. Today, we will learn about the art, science, and value of placemaking, including new research showcasing the positive return on investment associated with placemaking interventions. We'll also hear about the unique local partnerships that have brought about 4 successful transit stop transformation projects in the St. Louis region, with a 5th on the way. These 4 transformations alone have generated more than $13.5 million in investment at these stations, with more to come. In addition, from CMT's perspective, this has been an excellent way for us to move our advocacy into actual action. And it's changing the dialogue around transit in these communities and beyond. So let's get to it. Our panel today will feature Vedran Zibek, Head of Research and Development, and Anna Kreider, Partner at branding and environmental design firm Entro. Ken Sharkey, the Managing Director of the St. Clair County Transit District, Sheila Holm, the Community Outreach Director at AARP in St. Louis, and Laura Miller, the Development Director at the City of Maplewood in Missouri. So please make sure as we move through this program to place your questions in the chat box or the Q&A, and we will get to them as soon as possible. So let's start now by giving our resident experts from Entro the opportunity to provide an overview on placemaking and the transit projects and research they've been a part of. They're really strengthening the connection between people and places is what they're demonstrating through their research. So we'll hear from those panelists before we step into the conversation about some local projects through the transit transformation. So let's get started. Anna and Vedran.
Thank you so much, Kim. I'm going to share my screen and then we can get started. Okay, perfect. Wonderful. So we're so honored to be here today in order to share some insights with you and be a part of this dialogue. Vedran and I just wanted to start off by sharing a little bit about Entro to give some context. We are a firm of around 80 people. We have offices in Calgary, Vancouver, Toronto, and New York. And so Vedran sits in our Toronto office and I'm partner in the New York office. But for us, we really think about things as interdisciplinary. We have anywhere from a cognitive neuroscientist like Vedran to fine artists, graphic designers, industrial designers, and the like to come together and really try to solve unique challenges in unexpected ways. So we like to say that we design anything from a postage stamp, because we do. We design things as small as that to feasibility studies for wayfinding systems for entire cities. So really thinking across the gamut of all of the full spectrum of how people experience a place. We've done work across all sectors. We do placemaking, wayfinding, interpretive, and exhibits as well. But for today's conversation, what we really want to focus more in on is our work with transit. So we We've done a lot of strategy and wayfinding for transit agencies, as well as branding and placemaking elements. So really the impact of that across this sector and what that has on the neighborhoods and communities that they serve is something we want to really delve into more. So I'm going to hand it over to Vedran. He's going to talk a little bit about placemaking. Okay.
Thank you, Anna. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about placemaking, because placemaking is a term that a lot of people talk about and mention, but let's kind of establish some baseline conditions and understanding of what it is so that we can all kind of be on the same page as we have this discussion. And for us, a lot of placemaking has to do with connecting a person to the place. So it's about creating a connection between a person and the environment, creating an emotional tether between an individual and the environment. And for us, this is accomplished by ensuring that place has a clear identity and it's understandable and meaningful to the individual, right? So the environment tells a story and tells something deeper about the community and the surrounding environment. When this happens, when meaning and identity are communicated, an emotional connection between a person and space is formed. So if you go to the next slide, I have a quick little demonstration of what I mean by this relationship between meaning and emotional connection. So if you look at this image, it looks like a rectangle with a couple of very poorly drawn circles on it. But if I give this image a title, such as an elephant on its back in a swimming pool, all of a sudden it has some meaning. It's imbued with an identity. And this creates an emotional connection, right? I would imagine some of you are smirking or shaking your head at how silly this is. But the basic idea is that when you create meaning and when you give an environment or something identity, it creates a sense of connection between the person and the thing that they're viewing. So in this way, this is what making does. It gives identity, it gives meaning. And very quickly, if you look at this work done for the Emerson Park Transit Center, it's a clear example of how you create connection and identity through storytelling and meaning. This work is inspired by the history of music in East St. Louis. And thus, it tells a story, and by this story, you can create a relationship between the person and the environment and create sense of place. The other thing that placemaking does is it creates memorable and delightful experiences. So placemaking makes us smile, it makes us laugh, it makes us think, and it stays with us well after we leave the place or the actual physical space. Specifically, these moments that are most impactful are the ones that are peak moments or that are unique or distinct from our everyday experiences. If you think about it, we don't really remember every single thing that we experience throughout the day. What we really remember are those really punctuated, meaningful, unique parts of our everyday experience. And we also remember how our experiences start and end. So this in the psychological research is known as the peak end rule. This notion, if you go to the next slide, Anna, this notion that real impact from placemaking comes from creating peak moments by creating memorable experiences through our daily journeys through space, and by creating meaningful or interesting starting points and ending points to our daily journeys. If we tap into this quirk of human psychology, by creating impactful places, by fostering peak moments and creating a memorable first and last impression within an environment, we can foster and create sense of place and create placemaking. So interestingly enough, there's a clear example of these peak moments through the Maplewood Metro bus stop project. You take something that's usually very ordinary, such as a bus stop, and you elevate it. You create something that's really memorable and thoughtful, and that shows pride and attention space into the environment. So this creates a moment that attracts people, that makes people want to spend time within the space and within the environment, and creates this kind of reciprocal relationship between the person and the space, where people take care of the place because the environment looks like it's taken care of, and it looks thoughtful and interesting and meaningful. So now that we've set this table of what placemaking is, that it provides meaning, identity, and provides peak moments within one's journey, the question we ask ourselves is, why does placemaking matter, right? What is the research and evidence that we can show that placemaking matters to somebody's experience? So a little while ago, we partnered with a university here in Toronto called Toronto Metropolitan University to do a research project on placemaking. And pretty much what we ended up doing is we created a series of environments, some that had placemaking and some that didn't have placemaking. And then we compared people's responses to those environments. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see that there's an example of a transit subway stop, a very typical condition that you find here in Toronto. It's a perfectly fine looking transit subway stop. But we thought to ourselves, how could the experience be changed if we elevated the environment? So in the next couple of slides, you'll see redesigned versions, which placemaking interventions that has a clear brand and identity that connects to the surrounding community, that's a little bit more thoughtful than just a functional operating a subway stop. And what we found in the sense of how it changed people's responses is that placemaking resulted in environments that were 39% more exciting, 31% friendlier, 21% healthier, and 90% cleaner. And the most interesting part is that there was an increase by 25% in people's likelihood to use the station as part of their commute. So not only does it affect people's emotional states and their perceptions of things that we all care about, such as cleanliness and health and friendliness, but it also results in an increase in them wanting to use that transit stop as part of their wayfinding journey. So for us, when it comes to placemaking, it's this notion of providing people with an environment that they can intuit, understand, that has meaning and identity, that they know how to engage and interact with. And when we foster that, when we allow people's understanding of space to increase, we can create enjoyment, placemaking, and we can create a more deeper emotional connection that has these more pronounced effects on people's likelihood to use the transit service and so on. At this point, I think I'll hand it over to Anna to talk about some more project work where you'll see some of these things in action.
Great. So to start with, we have the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, more commonly known as SEPTA. And at the onset of the pandemic, they engaged Entro to take a look at their wayfinding and nomenclature and how they're using their branding throughout their frequent transit network, because they understood that in order to invest in that, they would be able to bring people back, hopefully, following the pandemic. I think that's a big aspect of placemaking and investing in the kind of community moments around transit at the moment is how do we get people to feel comfortable to come back as well. And so in terms of our work there was, in essence, multiple different types of vehicle types, and we needed to now take that from what people understood as one single line and combine them into now a new perception as a network. So what is it called, and how do we reference all of those different lines? And I think a big part of placemaking and wayfinding that's really critical is making sure you do have that sense of meaning and you're really engaging with the public to understand what is it that resonates with them. So for this work with SEPTA, we did a series of workshops, both with internal but primarily external advocacy groups and community groups in order to understand what were the words that meant something to them. What should we call the system? What should we call the lines? What should it really look like in the end? For those who didn't participate in the workshops, we also had a questionnaire, which is a very simple way of gaining community feedback as well. And we also had the opportunity to work with the University of Pennsylvania in terms of doing an eye tracking study, which is certainly an insightful way of finding where are those moments within a transit journey where people are getting lost. So in this case, you're giving a series of tests just to try to find your way. And with the glasses on, we're able to get data to see where you look, where you dwell, and even where do you look in order as well. We can tangle that down. So this was a really interesting way of having a very diverse group of riders tell us really how challenging it is, which it was certainly challenging. So ultimately what we've done is taken kind of a tangle of different services and lines and confusion and have a very simple hierarchy in terms of how we're calling the new system, the Metro, with a series of lettered lines and then service patterns as well. And so then translating that into clear maps. And then you can see the before after of the signage. So this is exciting because we're now in the implementation stage. So getting ready in the upcoming years to see this come to life. But just to give you a snapshot of how do we distill down that community input and really create a meaningful solution that will be embraced by the public. And then ultimately engaging with them again at the end. And our current score is 4.3 out of 5. So we're excited that people are excited about the concepts.
And I'm just going to very quickly, thank you, Anna. I'm going to very quickly talk about another project. Again, to illustrate this point that placemaking and experience within an environment is a result of creating thoughtful identity and meaning within a space, allowing a user to understand how to engage and interact with the transit network and so on. So OC Transpo, the transit service in Canada's capital, Ottawa, we were faced with a situation where the brand and the place identity was kind of all over the place. And this is a common scenario in a lot of environments and transit services. There's a lot of different brand elements. There wasn't a clear identity. There wasn't a concise meaning communicated to the riders. So showing you kind of what we ended up coming up with was this notion of creating a very clear and strong identifier to the system in the shape of this, let's say, Lifesaver application, which creates a peak moment within somebody's journey through a space, right? It's something that catches your eye, catches your attention, and signals a very thoughtful start to your journey, right? And that start is modulated based on the transit conditions, right? So here we have this glazed element with this lighting feature, again, demonstrating the clear identity, but in a thoughtful and different way that's very responsive to the surroundings. Another example here showing a downtown station where the Lifesaver now is applied on the surface of the facade and responding to the environment, but once again, very clearly identifying a peak moment within somebody's journey and clearly identifying the starting point to one's journey or entry into the transit system. The other thing that we did as well is, as I said before, placemaking is about connecting to the surrounding communities. So the other thing we did is we work with the community membership to create these place of interest maps, right? We identified what is accessible as one exits a transit stop with some basic information about walking distance. So this acknowledges that a transit service is not just movement through a space for the sake of movement, but that you're trying to get to somewhere, right? That it's a map for you to connect with the community at large. And the last piece I want to just highlight here is some of the work we did in coordinating with local artists to create placemaking interventions within the transit services, right? So all this artwork is inspired by local history and by the surrounding environments and communities. One final little example here, which I love, it's a bunch of nails. This is what it looks like when I try to do woodworking. They're kind of all over the place. Don't hold that against me. But again, it's thoughtful, playful moments within somebody's journey that really catch your attention and catch your move through the space. And I just want to wrap up again with the question, why does placemaking matter? So early on, we touched on the research we did with Toronto Metropolitan University. We also have some other data from work we did with MyWave, which is a transit service here in Mississauga, a large metropolitan area near Toronto. Once we created a new environment brand and we created new signage and a new identity for the system, we had some very clear outcomes. So for example, the week following brand launch and the launching of our system, they saw the highest weekly ridership that they've ever seen. There was also a 6.1% increase in ridership in the first quarter, and in the 2-year period, there's a 5.9% increase in ridership. So the basic idea is that thoughtful design, placemaking interventions, and place branding results in an environment that appears cared for, that shows thought and foresight, and that this is noticed by riders. And we have some clear data here to demonstrate that it has actual outcomes on ridership figures. And on that point, I'm gonna thank you for listening and giving us the time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to both of you. This is what you presented this morning is exactly what we're seeing at some of these transformations that have occurred in the St. Louis market, especially tying it into the history of the community and the fabric of the community, and also making it a cared for location, which seems to be critical for riders and residents and neighbors alike. And so thank you for getting us started on the conversation this morning. So before we jump into our other 3 panelists, let's take a glimpse of the micro level of the transit transformations that have occurred in the St. Louis market already. Thank you, Travis. I think that that's just a glimpse of the impact that some of these transportations have had on the communities. At Citizens for Modern Transit, we are beyond excited to be able to take this advocacy work that we have been doing for decades and really move it into permanent infrastructure, as well as creating these exciting projects in the community. But I must say, they would not be possible without our three other panelists that are on our call today. Sheila Holm with AARP in St. Louis, Ken Sharkey with the St. Clair County Transit District, and Laura Miller with the City of Maplewood. So let's jump right in. Let's start with Sheila, who these projects would not be possible at all without our partnership with AARP in St. Louis. So Sheila, how has AARP's partnership with CMT and the evolution of the Transit Stop Transformation Project impacted your members? And what can other communities learn about how to implement similar transit stop placemaking projects?
So good morning, everybody, and thank you, CMT, for organizing this and including me on this panel. But, you know, after intro, what more do we have to say, right? You guys covered a lot of the things that I was going to say, but I'll bring it local. How about that? So, you know, this has really been a true evolution of a relationship. It started at a conference that we helped host, and Kim showed up and said, hey, let's partner. Pop-up events happened, and then we got into the placemaking. The thing that really has, there are several things that have impacted the 50 plus with these projects. First, safety and security. So, you know, our transit agency has done amazing work on improving the safety and security at our stations. However, when people see a blank canvas, they see, as Kim likes to call it, a sea of concrete or gray, that it's intimidating to them. They don't understand it. But if we add color and elements and wayfinding, like the lifesavers, those things, it's welcoming, you know, like I know what I need to do. And so that makes them feel, again, more safe and secure and more inclined to use the system if they feel like, oh, I can do this. So that's one thing. Oh, and the other thing is just incorporating things like behind Laura, the hopscotch, or music that's at one of Ken's stations. So again, it's like, I know what that is. It's familiar to me, and I feel good about coming here. The next thing is comfort. And this is a big thing with me, is that every piece of seating we put in, it has to have a back and armrest. And, you know, because one of the things, and I'll cover this a little later in, is that when we sit on a bench or whatever, we want to be able to get up by ourselves. Okay. We don't want to have someone help us. So by having the back, that's the comfort, and the armrest to push up. It sounds really simple, but it is truly impactful, at least for the people 50 plus. The other thing is shade. Being comfortable. And that goes for everybody that uses the station. Is just comfort has been a huge thing. And the next thing, which I referenced before about the seating, is independence. So AARP obviously does a lot of research on what older adults are interested in, and being independent in their housing and their ability to move around their community is top. It's 85%. People say that's our priority. That's what we want. And so we have to create those ways for people to maintain that independence in transportation. Having access to it, feeling like I can use it, is critical for the 50 plus. So, and, you know, and we see these ahas, you know, I have seen that in my time frame. We have a state president who had never used transit before he became president. We took him on a little tour of some of the transit station stops, and now he uses it. He's like, oh my gosh, I get it. You know, I get it. So, so I think that what we've done has made a difference. And one final thing I want to add is that these projects have really, at least in the AARP world, have received national recognition. So we have a community challenge grant program that every single one that CMT has applied for, they've gotten. Actually, they got the very first one that we ever did. And it, you know, this work has been elevated because of the importance that it lends to the 50 plus, to everybody actually, but from ARP's perspective, the 50 plus. A more recent thing is that they are holding this up as a best practice at the U.S. Mayor's conference later this summer. It's big. It's, you know, normally they put just ARP branded things, but this is a collaborative project that they're elevating and saying this should be replicated across the U.S. So, woohoo! Well, you know, I'm a cheerleader for it, so I answered most of that, right?
You did. You did great. Thank you, Sheila, and thank you for helping to elevate these projects on the national level as well. It wouldn't be possible without AARP. So Ken is another one of our critical partners on the Illinois side. We have 2 projects that we have open and a third in the works right now at the 5th and Missouri Transit Center in East St. Louis. So Ken, what do you see as the primary benefits of these projects for your agency and riders on the Illinois side and the surrounding communities?
Thank you, Kim. You know, at the district, previously we were really involved in just doing traditional investments in the Metrolink stops, basically putting in new LED lighting and improving parking lots and striping, and try to add, you know, more of these traditional everyday kind of you know, refreshing the aesthetics of the stations. But once I learned about your station at bus stop at Maplewood, I took a trip over there, and I was really impressed right away with it. You know, I got out of the car and I walked around, and I really got a sense of relaxing but energetic vibe for the neighborhood and, you know, the surrounding community. So I thought perhaps we should try to expand this concept in Illinois, and with the help of Citizens for Modern Transit, AARP, and the Southwestern Illinois Realtors, you know, we and my governing board, we basically selected Emerson Park as the first station to do in Illinois. And the theme, I think was alluded to earlier, was the stop honored the rich cultural roots of jazz and blues music, which the city is actually nationally renowned for. So the riders and the local community really have embraced these unique transit investments. And there's been kind of a snowball effect, which has developed with the continuation of these transformation projects in Illinois. And so basically what we've learned and what we've observed is the community and the riders really take pride and ownership of the investments that we made. And we really haven't experienced at these locations we've done this any serious vandalism or any incidents against individuals or property. So I think this relaxing atmosphere in a time when really, you know, after the pandemic, you know, we hear from bus operators and from people in the service industry, people seem to be a little bit more on edge. So when you're passing through these stations and these placemaking areas, I think that, you know, it just really adds to the value of the system and the appreciation. And additionally, you know, we believe that this investment that we make is also going to be a catalyst for further investment in that immediate area and surrounding community.
Thanks, Ken. So, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the other partner on all of these projects is obviously Metro Transit and the transit agency itself. They are willing and able to work with us, and that makes the ability to transform these stations possible. And so we're really grateful for them being able to, you know, say, okay, yes, we're willing to work with you, rather than, nope, we're not doing this. So it's great to have them on board as well.
Yeah, Metro's
so now
been a great partner. Yes, thank you.
So now let's turn to Laura. So Laura is with a municipality in St. Louis County, and she was our first stop. So there wasn't, you know, that Missouri show me. She was willing to jump in on the unknown with us. And so we are so grateful that she was willing to take the risk. But the bus stop transformation and project in Maplewood, what was the genesis of this project, and how have the results been for the community since the ribbon was cut in 2019, Laura?
Well, thank you for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here and miss my time with Kim and Sheila. We've spent a lot of time together. For those that aren't familiar with Maplewood, just a quick little overview. We are an inner ring suburb. We're located in mid St. Louis County. We're actually 1.5 square miles. We're a small community. We've got about 8,200 residents. But I think it's our location. We border St. Louis City, Shrewsbury, Webster Groves, Brentwood, and Richmond Heights. And we have two major arterial roads that intersect in Maplewood. And on top of that, we've got two Metrolink stops in our small community. And one of them along Manchester Road actually serves as the Maplewood Transit Center that connects the Metro stop with bus routes and paratransit services as well. And so our community, we're known to be an accessible community. We've got a very high, I believe it's 92 for walkability in our community. And so, so anyway, I was on the job about a year when I received a very enthusiastic call from Kim, and telling me about, you know, this idea of transforming our bus stop, which actually sits right in the middle, right in the heart of our downtown community. And so I met with Kim and Sheila, and they were explaining to me about the pop-up metro markets that they had been doing and raising awareness about placemaking in transit, and that they would like to have Maplewood be their pilot program. And so, you know, I was very intrigued. I think for me, the hook was the idea of connecting individuals and neighborhoods and encouraging transit riders to stop and explore versus just passing through a community. And so again, this being the heart of our downtown area, the streets are lined with small mom and pop shops. This is a line that's heavily used, especially, you know, not only by residents, but also by those that are working in our community. And so, you know, again, I was very intrigued, and the city was on board from the beginning. And Kim and Sheila made the process easy. There were a lot of moving parts with this because we were working with public, private, nonprofit. The transit stop actually sits halfway on the city right of way, and the other half sits on private property. And so CNB Bank St. Louis has always been a big partner in the community, and they were wonderful to work with, and allowing us to actually encroach even more on their property to expand the footprint of the transit stop. So, you know, and I think a big part of this was getting the community involved from the beginning and taking ownership in the project. So, you know, CMT did a series of surveys. We had community workshops, questionnaires, and this was for transit riders, business owners, residents to gather and talk about what they'd like to see happen in this space. And I think it speaks to the community. The artwork is from a local artist, and who's pretty well known here in the community. And unfortunately, this project started taking place and COVID hit. And so we weren't able to do the last part of the community engagement project of them helping to paint the Maplewood sign. But you know, again, I think the community really enjoyed everything leading up to that. And then to one day come out and see this final product. It's fun to see people interacting with the hopscotch, so that element of play that's been incorporated into the space. It's inviting. It's beautiful. It's colorful. The addition of the lighting has helped. It feels like a very safe place to be. The seating that was chosen, as Sheila mentioned, it's comfortable. It's easy to get in and out of. It allows for people to sit together and have a conversation. So you'll see members of the community that aren't using transit sitting there enjoying a cup of coffee, maybe talking to somebody who's waiting for the bus. And so that connection is really important for our community. And this particular space actually is the backdrop to many of our community events as well. It's a gathering space. And, you know, to echo what Ken said about pride, the community really takes a lot of pride in this space. We have not had any vandalism. It's kept clean. We have trash cans in the area, and they're used. And then obviously the partnership with CMB Bank and taking care of the surrounding space around it. So it's absolutely become a gathering space for our community.
Thank you, Laura. I remember the community engagement for this project. And one of the things that kept popping up is residents and businesses, they wanted a front porch feel for their downtown area. And, you know, I hope we delivered on that, but that's kind of where the glider idea came from, and others. If you were sitting on your front porch, what would you have on the front porch, and what would you want it to include? And, you know, lighting and color and comfortable seating. And so that was really our goal. And that came directly from the residents and the businesses along that Main Street area in Maplewood. So thank you so much, Laura, for providing an update on the project. So as a reminder, if you have questions for our panel, please place them in the Q&A or the chat box, and we'll get to them as they come in. But to start with, Vedran and Anna, I have a three-part question for you. So, you know, we have in St. Louis County has more than 90 small municipalities. All of them have bus stops in their area. So are you seeing these type of projects pop up at smaller transit agencies and other communities embracing this placemaking in other parts of the country? And based on that question, what do you see as the best way to overcome reluctance to invest in these type of projects, and does zoning impact these type of projects? So it's a three-part question.
Yeah, I would say we are definitely seeing a lot of focus on how do we get people to feel comfortable again using public transit. So this investment, it's in terms of bettering the environment, having this, it's in a way almost a perception of safety, which leads then to the actual safety, because more riders equals more eyes equals more feeling of comfort in order to navigate. So investing in any type of enhancements to the experience, a lot of mobility hubs as well, so that we can encourage multimodal use. But all of these placemaking and investments in wayfinding also just really does encourage people to want to come back and use it as well. In terms of zoning, we haven't had any challenges with that. It seems that there's a lot of acceptance. If there is, everyone can, it's hard to argue with seeing the impacts of getting people to come back out and increase ridership where it was so low. So we really haven't had any pushback from any governing agency in terms of being able to make these improvements. Vedran, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, sure. I can add a couple of things. So at the beginning, Anna mentioned that we work on everything as small as postage stamps to whole cities. And I think that kind of carries over to transit work as well, right? So a range of sizes and service offerings. And placemaking can never be too small. It can never be too large, right? As long as you're doing it in a thoughtful way that connects to people, then you're going to be successful. In regards to how you get buy-in and kind of build momentum, I think it's as a result of what we're doing, what all of us are doing in our own individual kind of paths and ways, right? You know, speaking about the value, demonstrating it. I think a lot of times seeing is believing, right? So as Ken, when you visited the Maplewood stop, right, you had a very visceral, real reaction to it, right? And I think that speaks louder than anything, right? And yeah, and then obviously a lot of our mandate has been to fund and conduct research to demonstrate the value and validity of these sorts of interventions. And I think combining all of that together, some of the numbers and some of the qualitative kind of subjective experiences, as I just mentioned a second ago, speak loudly for the value of placement.
Thank you. So a tag on to that, we're talking a lot about urban areas, and a question's come in, how could this be impactful in rural areas as well? Is there any difference in the planning of placemaking?
No, I think it's really, it needs to be responsive to the community it's serving and really be a reflection back. And so that's where the community engagement piece really comes in. What will best serve that specific community? And then I think what we've all seen in these examples is that there's really then community ownership too, and pride. And so that aspect of, if you can really get the feedback, respond to the specific environment, that just really garners a lot of pride and ownership, so that it becomes a space that everyone cares for. It's not just whoever is in charge, it's really the full community as well.
So I think that goes to one of the comments that we received from Metro Transit CEO, that this is a great example of how a stronger partnership helps us see a greater impact. Sometimes, as any institution, they don't see past their bureaucratic drab. So thanks to all of us for making it better. So thank you, Talby, for that comment. And I think it kind of ties in exactly with what Anna was saying. So Sheila, a question for you. You've worked on all of these projects. They wouldn't be possible without you. We're on our 5th project, and we're identifying our 6th projects, which will be a bus stop in the city of St. Louis. What do you think are the most important aspects of these efforts to ensure successful projects?
So I'm going to echo a couple things that I think everybody has said. First is you need to talk to the people, whoever the people are. So the business owners, the residents, the organizations that already engage in that area, the transit agency, everybody, and get their buy-in, get their feedback on what is needed. And I love the glasses thing. I want a pair of those to do that. But so the other thing that ties with that is then whatever comes out should represent the community. And again, that was, I think everybody has said that already, is making sure that it ties right back to the community and what people are saying. And then money, 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 money. So that has been a big thing for us in almost every project. But, you know, in having, it's like running a nonprofit. You need to have diversified funding. So don't have all the money coming from one pot. But, you know, bringing more partners in, like the Realtors Association that Ken had referenced earlier, having these, what I call maybe strange bedfellows, contributing to it. But then there's that shared ownership as well. And probably, let's see if it's the final one. The final one is, and so important, is who's going to maintain it after we're gone. Mm-hmm. So we come in and we do it, and we find the money and we make it happen, but then we leave. And so who's going to take ownership of it? And I'll talk about Maplewood briefly, and that Maplewood decided we're going to take this on. We will maintain this site. And so it's getting that agreement right up front of who's going to manage that. And the same with the Ken's. He is, you know, said, yep, we're there. We're going to take care of it. So I think those are the big buckets of work. Now, I would like to point out that everyone can learn all about all this stuff with the book that everyone will get, I believe. It's available on the website, on Kim's website too. But that goes through the step-by-step, which can really get everybody the tools that they need to do this in their own community.
Thank you, Sheila, and thank you for that plug. We'll make sure that everyone gets their small coffee table book as soon as they're interested in having it. We did have a question come in, and Ken, I'm gonna pose it to you because it goes back to they've used my terminology. We have a lot of stations in the St. Louis region that have a sea of parking lot around them. I like to call it a canvas of gray concrete, and I completely agree with this. But Ken, can you talk a little bit, and I mentioned it in my opening remarks, that post-transformation, we've seen more than $13.5 million in investment at
Okay, I'll jump in, Ken, since she froze. So can you just expand a bit on the kind of investment that you've seen as a result of the transformations that have happened at your stations?
Sorry, did I freeze?
Yes, you did.
Okay,
I
Sheila and I share a brain, so obviously she knew right where I was going with that. So Ken, tell us how we teed up your transformation for further investment and what's happening at Emerson Park.
I think Sheila touched on it with getting those other partnerships involved in the community. And if you remember at Emerson Park, we just really had a beautiful day, and the Southwest Illinois Realtors and Citizens for Modern Transit, we had all these volunteers coming there, filling these big pots of with plants and beautiful flowering materials. And a lot of the people that maybe volunteered and were there that day, probably, really never experienced that part of East St. Louis or any of East St. Louis. So basically, it's an area that, had disinvestment, and it makes people aware that, these types of investments are needed to be able to make these communities more livable, more enjoyable, and to attract other businesses. So by bringing all these different volunteers and groups together, I think that just, creates an opportunity to actually do more. And we have heard from the community that they appreciate it so much that they do want us to do more, and we're willing to do it, and we want to continue it. But we don't necessarily always want to go along with it. We want to be a big financial contributor to it, and we want to involve a lot of different partners to be able to bring these projects to a successful completion. And then the ongoing maintenance, we've committed to do that, which is no small undertaking. That's really probably the biggest cost long term. And so we've made that commitment to continue to maintain these infrastructure while it's after been implemented.
In addition to that, Ken's team has been able to, post-transformation, received a multi-million-dollar Rebuild Illinois grant to actually bring additional jobs and amenities for riders to the Emerson Park Station. So a new public safety building is now going in at that station, which goes to the question of how do we develop that sea of parking around many of our stations. Well, Ken has successfully been able to take that next step at the Emerson Park Station, and there will be, how many jobs will be in that building, Ken?
Well, it's going to be the St. Clair County Sheriff's Department's Metro's OCC center, and then also we're relocating the emergency management systems 911 center into the building. So all these security infrastructure, in essence, right there on the alignment where it needs to be.
So thank you, Ken. Laura, let's talk a little bit about, you were our first foray, dipping our toes into transit transformations. There are questions out there about what exactly did community engagement look like, and how did we get to the people? What did that look like in Maplewood, and why do you think that we were successful with the avenues we took, especially in light of the fact that this project was at the very beginning of the pandemic?
So I think, the type of engagement that we offered. So, from different times of day to locations that met the needs of people in the community is very important. So you're doing something in the morning versus something in the evening versus something on a weekend. And it was engaging for people of all ages. So I think our first project we did was at a coffee shop just across the street from the stop. And so what I loved about this was the fact that we were given crayons, pencils, paper, asked a series of questions, and you had the opportunity to draw, or you could just, verbally, explain what you wanted to see in this space. And so it was inviting. It was engaging. I think we had a pretty diverse group of our residents and business owners that came out to that first workshop. And we learned a lot. And Kim, I'm glad you mentioned the front porch. Maplewood has lots of beautiful front porches with swings. You see people sitting on their front porch day and night. And so that concept did come through quite a bit. And then obviously the location of the transit stop, there's quite a bit of activity going on, whether there's an event or just people walking by and shopping and dining, to it's just a busy corridor with vehicles. And so that concept of sitting back and watching. And so the important thing was just having multiple opportunities for people to come and engage and share their thoughts and ideas and really listen to them. I know we also reached out to the school district and engaged the schools in the process as well. So, and then taking all of that information back to the drawing board and coming up with what I think really speaks to the community and is what they were asking for. So that engagement is so important. The surveys, even the surveys, going door to door to the businesses and writing Metro and surveying the writers and what do you want to see? And I know safety was a big part of that, and lighting. That was a fairly dark corner. You know, we took this space that was not so inviting, had a planter that was older, had a piece of public art that was in need of some work, and then a shelter that had seen better days. And so the idea of taking that shelter and reusing it was also important to the community, so that that idea of recycling and sustainability. And so, you know, I just overly impressed with the outcome. We did additional engagements during one of our events as well, during the holiday walk. So we had the concepts out on poster boards and allowed the community to come and engage and give further comments. So I think there were multiple opportunities that that encouraged that participation from the community, which is extremely important, and it was well done.
Thank you. And I think, Laura, you touched on something that a lot of times people may not take into consideration when they're talking about placemaking, but it's that segment of the market, kids, children. Yes. We don't always engage kids and children, but we're trying to create vibrant, interactive spaces, and engaging with the kids has really gone a long way. And the majority of our projects at Emerson Park, we engaged with the East St. Louis High School students, and they were the brains behind the mural that you see at that station. It was their designs that were incorporated into the mural that was done by a professional at that stage that really pays homage to the history of music. At Belleville, what came out of the community is the importance of the arts community. And so Belleville East and West high school students were engaged, and they created designs that were incorporated into the crosswalk, as well as the art that you see on the windows of the building. And so I thank you for mentioning that. I think that that's a really critical piece that sometimes gets overlooked when we're talking about community projects. Yes. Is what do the kids want? How do we engage and create these interactive, fun environments? And they have a lot better idea than my old self or, you know, some of the other people. And so they've really helped to bring life to a lot of the stations that we've transformed so far. So I think
actually Laura's son came up with the idea that resulted in the glider, because he said he wanted a porch swing. Yeah. So we ended up doing so. Yeah.
That element of play is so important. You know, we do have families obviously that you utilize the transit center. So you know, for a child to just have to sit there and wait, it's, you know, we've all, you know, for those of us that have kids, you know, trying to keep them sitting still is nearly impossible at times. So adding that element of play, and it's a element that allows the parent or grandparent or guardian to engage as well, which is wonderful. I mean, you do see people utilizing the hopscotch on any given day, which is fun.
So post-COVID, what we've noticed on the national level really is that transit ridership is down. You know, most cities, most agencies they're seeing a small uptick in ridership as they start to come back and we start to re-engage. People start to go back to work. Some are staying home. So this has really impacted ridership. Anna and Vedran, do you have evidence that these placemaking projects are impacting ridership? I think you gave an example early on in your presentation, but are you seeing that across the board? And what do you think are the most important interventions to impacting those riders?
Vedran, do you have any other statistics you wanted to share first?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I could regurgitate the previous statistics, but basic idea is that we have both from the research we've done clear outcome being that people are more likely to ride if there's placemaking interventions, if the environment appears cared for. And then some of the other work, like I mentioned before, some of the statistics we have from our My Way project, increase in ridership post place branding, wayfinding and signage, and placemaking interventions. So generally kind of stating it like that. The one thing I really want to touch on, which is connected to some of the previous points that were made in the sense of engaging a community, it's a notion that if you want these placemaking interventions to have the outcomes that you want, that these kind of powerful outcomes, our research does show that it has to be more than just wallpaper, right? It has to be something that's actually thoughtful, right? So this distinction between wallpaper, which looks nice, but you can't really connect to it, compared to like a family portrait, right? When you look at a family portrait, there's an emotional connection, a deeper sense of understanding of the space and the environment. And with that, our research demonstrates that the behavioral outcomes we care about, such as increased ridership, that's how you can create those sorts of behavioral outcomes. That it's not enough just to be wallpaper, it has to be thoughtful, it has to be connected to the environment and to the community. I think that's gonna be the one little piece. Anna, anything else you wanna add?
No, I think that's a really good thought. And I mean, I think it's even, Laura mentioned just in passing, we have trash cans and people actually use them. It's this aspect of, if you see an environment being taken care of and that there's been an investment there, you're more likely to respect that and be a part of it. So I think it's this, it makes us feel automatically more comfortable. And so that's either through clear wayfinding, clear, meaningful placemaking, but just seeing that level of care then has a response that you want to be a part of it. You feel better being there. So
that actually makes me think, if I can just add a quick little point to that, there's a ton of research in social psychology that demonstrates that cared for environments lead to more pro-social behaviors and a decrease in antisocial behaviors. So I think a couple of us on the talk today mentioned the decrease in vandalism, violence, and increase in safety overall, right? So it's very clear in the research literature, and it looks like we're all seeing it in action, which is really wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
We are definitely hearing anecdotally about individuals who are using these stations, talking about them as my station. So ownership has really grown significantly for riders, especially Ken's team hears it a lot. I'll get a call and they'll be like, well, the riders love their station and they're taking care of it. So it's always good to hear that. It adds a whole new element, when your rider actually believes that this is their station, they want to take care of it. They've asked for a new music selection at Emerson Park. We got to switch it up a little, we're told, because we're here every day. So it's also a new way to engage around public transit on the positive side, which is really, really, it's a great feeling. And so I love seeing the ownership around these transformations as well. And so I think that really does come from the very beginning, that grassroots engagement about what do you want to see here, actually making the transformation. And just like Anna and Vedran just said, people care. If it looks like the station is cared for, the riders care too. And it really, it's a level of respect. And I think that's what we're seeing in this ownership. So before we end for this morning, I always like to ask this question on our panels, because I think this is the last thing that people may take with them as they start their day. So let's, as Vedran says, let's make this a peak moment for these individuals so they don't forget about it. But what is a key takeaway from each of you on why a community or an agency should engage in a project like this, or what is the greatest impact to transit that these projects can have on a community from each of your perspectives? Does anyone want to jump in first?
I will.
Great.
I think it makes, for transit riders, it's a place they want to be. Having shelter, having a comfortable place to sit that's fun and inviting and welcoming, versus your traditional stop where you might be standing out in the elements. But I also think, for us, there's sort of that wow factor. Oh, wait, that's a bus stop. I think people don't realize, they look at it as a piece of public art installation. They might not necessarily realize that it's a bus stop. And so I think, return on investment is high with this. And it really sort of creates that gathering space in your community. And, would love the opportunity to do this again.
Thank you, Laura. Give us a call. Anyone else? Takeaways?
I'll go. I'll just kind of build off of what Laura said, right? I think it's this notion of improving the functional pieces of somebody's wayfinding and transit experience. So understanding how to use the space, increasing safety, Laura, as you mentioned, shade and so on, and comfortable seating as mentioned earlier by Sheila. But beyond that, it's creating these kind of peak memorable moments and expect more from our transit experiences, right? I think we should all expect a little bit more. We should expect and want our transit services to care about us as riders, right? And I think that has a lot of value. And at the end of the day, placemaking is an investment in human experience, right? It's not just for the sake of doing it. You're doing it because it has clear outcomes on people's experience of a transit service. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
And I'll just add, I just want to reemphasize that this is scalable, that it doesn't have to be unattainable, that it even the smallest interventions make a big impact. So I think looking for volunteers if you need them, having the community be involved, looking for partners, making sure that you're creating a meaningful space, but that it can be scalable. So it shouldn't be intimidating to think that could be implemented.
Thank you, Anna. And we actually just had a question from one of our attendees. How would someone get involved in these transit transformation projects or contribute to them in the St. Louis region? So I did, Sheila, let them know that they could get involved through CMT and AARP and contribute or sponsor. I mean, this is open for individuals or organizations who are interested. All are welcome. It really does take a village to transform a station. And so, reach out to us at any time. Sheila and Ken, any last takeaways?
These projects really just is a real demonstration that there's a care for the ridership in a very long, sustainable way going forward. So I think it's important that we continue on this path. And I know we're going to have this one in 5th and Missouri this year. Kim and you've been talking about another location here in Illinois for next year. And as soon as we get done with this project, we'll probably start on that one.
Thank you, Ken. Sheila, my partner in crime.
Yeah. So to the last point that was made by someone putting it in chat, it does take a village. And Kim and I learn as we go along. We're learning more than we have probably ever thought we would about some of this stuff. But we want more people to be part of the team to help us with this. And I think all of us, whether it's through an environmental standpoint or maintaining independence or just being able to see parts of the city you've never seen before, because when you're on the train, you see things differently than you do if you're driving. So, but we need transit. And so this is a way to get more people at the stops by making them more inviting. And then also the sense of community pride just starts exploding the more we do it. So come join the team.
Thank you. So I want to thank all of you today for this really informative and robust conversation. I personally think that these projects are really exciting, if you couldn't tell by all my commentary throughout this entire event this morning. But these projects really are changing the dialogue around public transit in St. Louis. And this isn't just a St. Louis thing, as Anna and Vedran have showed us. This is something happening on the national level. And it's really exciting that the St. Louis region is in on it. And so, I think that this is something that we can continue to work on. Our new booklet, you can download the Transit Stop Transformation booklet on our website. A recording of today's discussion will be posted later this morning. And that's something you can share if individuals couldn't make it this morning. I think that this conversation will continue to be ongoing. As I said, Sheila and I have a goal to have a coffee table book of projects by the time we're complete. There's 38 stations and a lot of bus stops in the St. Louis region. So, we have an endless choice ahead of us. We are working on 5th and Missouri. It is underway in East St. Louis. It should be open by the end of this summer. We're in the process of selecting our next stop in the city of St. Louis, But if you have a bus stop or station in your area, give us a call. I mean, some of the commentary coming out of Q&A was, how do we work with individuals? Give us a call. Let's chat about the future of your transit stop transformation in your community. Also, look for additional information about our upcoming events on our website at cmt-stl.org, and check our social channels. You'll see the transformations in progress. We chronicle them as we go. We have opportunities for volunteers to come out and help us. The next volunteer day will be in June at the 5th and Missouri Station. We need people who like to dig in the soil and plant. So we need you. So if you're available, give us a call. And finally, if you're not a member of Citizens for Modern Transit, we are a member-based organization. We would love to have you as an advocate along on this ride with us. Also, as the question was asked, if you're interested in sponsoring a transit transformation, give us a call. That opportunity is available as well. Thank you again to our remarkable our panelists this morning. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Make it a great day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.